A temporary reprieve may have come the way of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoge, as the Court of Appeal today barred the Code of Conduct Tribunal from proceeding with the hearing in the false assets declaration suit filed against him. The three-man panel granted the interim order pending ruling on the CJN's application for a stay of proceedings. At the resumed hearing of the appeal, the defense counsel, Mr. Wole Olanikwekun, told the court that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has vowed not to comply with orders from other courts, which it described as courts of coordinate jurisdiction, except that of the Court of Appeal. He, however, emphasized on the issue of jurisdiction raised before the CCT, which according to him was ignored. He argued that if the application is not granted, it will affect the entire judiciary and it will be a threat to the country and the Constitution as a whole. Justice Abdul Aboki, who presided over the appeal, however, ordered the CCT to stay proceedings pending the determination of the appeal and adjourn to January the 30th. Justice Onoge is being prosecuted on 6 counts of alleged false assets declaration. The CCB accused him, among other allegations, of failing to declare domiciliary accounts used for transfer of foreign currencies, which had existed since 2011. The Bureau said the failure of the CJN to declare the accounts in one of 2 forms filled in 2016 meant that he was liable of false assets charges. The federal government also asked the tribunal to order Mr. Onoge to step aside as CJN during the trial.
The Court of Appeal has adjourned to Wednesday next week for ruling, and the Court of Appeal has stayed proceedings at the Code of Conduct Tribunal pending its ruling of Wednesday. So it's okay. Very okay. Very, very okay.
And staying with legal matters, the Federal High Court has convicted an ex-administrative secretary of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mr. Christian Nwosu, who was charged with money laundering. Mr. Nwosu was found guilty of benefiting from the sum of $115.01 million, which a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Mrs. Dezani Alison Madueke, gave out during the 2015 elections. Our correspondent, Victoria Ido, reports.
The absence of the first defendant in this case, Mr. Christian Nwosu, did not stop the judgment in the case of money laundering against him and his co-defendant, Tijani Bashir, who was present at the Federal High Court, Ikoyi. Counsel to Nwosu had presented a document stating that his client was in the hospital, having collapsed at a bus park on arrival in Lagos. But the prosecution would have nothing of it, and he urged the court to go ahead with the judgment, according to Section 352 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. In his response, Justice Mohammed Idris stated that the documents provided did not have details of when Nwosu would be out of the hospital, and therefore the court could not wait indefinitely for him. He then proceeded to give his judgment. According to Justice Idris, the prosecution had proved the case beyond reasonable doubt in the manner required by law. The judge found them guilty of a 9-count charge bordering on money laundering to a tune of over 264 million naira. Justice Idris added that the activities of the accused persons were beyond their duties as INEC officials and amount to an illegality. Although Christian Nwosu was unavailable in court today for health reasons, as said by his defense lawyer, Justice Idris insisted that the EFCC officials must produce him for sentencing by Friday. It had been back and forth from the beginning of the case in 2016. Mr. Nwosu, who had earlier pleaded guilty to receiving 30 million naira gratification from former Minister of Petroleum, Mrs. Dezani Alison Madueke, ahead of the 2015 general elections, later changed his plea to not guilty. Both Nwosu and Bashir were first charged alongside another INEC official, Yisa Adedoyin, who later pleaded guilty to the offense and was convicted following a plea bargain.
I just want to pray that maybe that this judgment will stay a very good warning to the Nigerian populace to see that there's going to be an end to the money laundering related activities.
By Friday, the number of days, months, and maybe years these accused persons will be spending in custody will be known. Victoria Idowu, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the appeal court has set aside the ruling of an FCT High Court which stopped Mr. Donald Duke from parading himself as a presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party. The three-man panel led by Justice Abdullah Boki held that the application is illegal and unconstitutional and should not have been entertained by the lower court. The court also held that the amendment relied upon by the claimant, Professor Jerry Gana, did not take effect until October the 8th, 2 days after its ratification and election of Mr. Duke as the party's candidate in line with Section 222 of the Electoral Act. Away from legal matters to politics now, with barely 3 weeks to the presidential election, the candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, has withdrawn from the race to form a coalition against the ruling All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party. In a statement released earlier today, Dr. Ezekwesili says her decision to withdraw from the race followed extensive discussions with Nigerians at home and in diaspora. According to her, the action is also prompted by an examination of the country's electoral environment, sequel to the 2019 presidential debate of Saturday, January the 19th, 2019. The statement says, quote, "It is my ardent belief that this broad coalition for a viable alternative has now become more than ever before an urgent mission for and on behalf of Nigerian citizens. I have therefore chosen to lead the way in demonstrating the much-needed patriotic sacrifice for our national revival and redirection." End of quote. Dr. Ezekwesili says the action is just a demonstration of the commitment she made under the presidential aspirants coming together arrangement in 2018. The former education minister says, having made it clear that the country has always had a 20-year cycle, the year 2019 begins another cycle, and she is ready to join other Nigerians of goodwill to ensure that the country does not miss this golden opportunity. Meanwhile, the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria has been reacting to the withdrawal of Dr. Ezekwesili from the presidential race. The party says it's therefore withdrawing its support for her and throwing its weight behind the candidacy of President Muhammadu Buhari of the APC. In a statement issued by the national chairman of the party, Gani Galadima, the party accuses Dr. Ezekwesili of only using the party's platform to negotiate a position as Nigeria's finance minister. According to Mr. Galadima, Dr. Ezekwesili has not demonstrated any real commitment to her campaign.
Dr. Obi Ezekwesili is the only presidential candidate who was so militant in a campaign without any tangible thing on the ground to indicate any seriousness in the prosecution of a campaign. No campaign secretariat, no billboard, no, not even posters, except in the last 2, 3, 4 days, or any great commitment on the ground to indicate any seriousness. We have decided to weigh the big stick, and the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria is withdrawing support for our presidential aspiration. And in lieu of that, we want to inform the whole world and supporters of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria nationwide and all our members that we are seizing this opportunity of this press conference to endorse the second-term bid of President Muhammadu Buhari to take Nigeria to the next level. We want to use this medium to please tell her that we are not aware of the several and multifarious accounts that herself and her personal aides have opened to generate funds, but we are aware that money was coming to her in droves, but we didn't know the sources of this fund. That she should please come and render account to us and come and give back to the party all that belongs to the party. Because without a party, nobody will give her any fund or donate anything to her.
In the meantime, the Independent National Electoral Commission has also been reacting to the withdrawal of Dr. Obi Ezekwesili from the presidential race. In an interview on our political program, Politics Today, the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, Mr. Rotimi Oyekomi, explains that according to Section 35 of the Electoral Act, a candidate can only withdraw from contesting not later than 45 days before the general elections. Mr. Oyekomi also explains that from the INEC schedule of activity, November the 17th, 2018 is the last date for withdrawal.
Ordinarily, candidates are free to withdraw the candidature in any election. But in this case, the timing is the problem. Because according to Section 35 of the Electoral Act, you can indicate that willingness not later than 45 days to the general election. And in the 2019 timetable and schedule of activities we issued as far back as January last year, 17th of November 2018 is the last day for withdrawal or replacement of withdrawn candidates by political parties for presidential and National Assembly elections. So in this case, neither the person we are talking about or any other candidate for those two categories of election can withdraw their candidature as it is or be replaced at all. She cannot be forced to participate, but the fact is the law says you cannot withdraw. That's what the law says. So it's not a question of whether she is being forced to participate or not. But if she had indicated earlier, then an opportunity will have been given to the political party to replace within that timeline. But now it is too late.
Away from politics now, the Senate and House of Representatives have passed the 27,000 Naira minimum wage amendment bill through the crucial second reading. Both houses suspended their rules and put the bill through first and second reading simultaneously on the same day. Meanwhile, the Senate has adjourned until February the 19th after the general elections.
My pride, my pleasure, and indeed
It's not a full Senate chamber, as has been the case in the last few days. Regardless, lawmakers get on with the business of the day. Deputy Senate President Ezekwesili, who presides over plenary, reads a letter from President Buhari on the much-anticipated minimum wage bill.
The purpose of this letter is to forward to you for legislative action a new minimum wage bill to further amend the National Minimum Wage Amendment Act 2011 in order to give a new national minimum wage of 27,000 naira per month to the lowest paid Nigerian worker from the current 18,000 naira per month.
Senate Majority Leader makes a peculiar request to his colleagues concerning the minimum wage bill.
This is a very, very, very important and critical bill, and I therefore feel that this Senate should give it a very expeditious passage, and that requires suspension of Order 79 so that we take the first and second reading immediately.
The request is granted and the debate on the minimum wage bill begins.
To us, 30,000, if we are going to be realistic, is even not enough. But it's a step forward.
We must not increase the wage bill across the board by 50%. Once you do that, then your wage bill becomes too big for you to pay. What we are more concerned now is that anybody earning 18,000 now should be paid 30,000 first before any other person can enjoy any manner of increment.
The other issue of concern to me, and I believe to many other people, is the exemption to organizations, establishments employing less than 25 persons. So if that gets true, and I hope it do not, that means that a whole number of our workers will be outside the minimum wage bracket.
The minimum wage bill passes through second reading, and the Senate sets up an ad hoc committee to work on the bill and report back in 2 weeks.
That must be addressed. Whip. They will go to Professor Mojo.
The bill also comes up for consideration in the House of Representatives.
That the federal government has said it will pay a minimum of 30,000 naira. But what this bill, which if it's passed, provides is that 27,000 naira is the minimum wage.
We've been talking about for the past 2 years. And now the bill comes out. We are talking about 27,000. Mr. Speaker, 30,000 will be what this House should pass.
Even if I'm a senior officer, I will not agree. You increase 30,000 to my next junior level. I may be in level 6 and in that 30,000, and you have increased that amount, which is 27,000 as a minimum wage, to somebody who will meet me as a level 6 officer and is a level 3 officer.
The House of Representatives also passes the minimum wage bill through second reading,
and sets up an ad hoc committee which is to hold a public hearing on Monday, January 28.